Oh my God. Look at that.
That's what I said.
That is so nice. I gotta do her whole thing. Look at Grandma.
What is it?
Oh yeah, I know who got that. Some lady.
That was Dion. She's with Shakia.
Some lady with a red.
Oh, this is so nice. Look at that. Y'all see her?
Yep.
Hey, Mom.
She told me.
Look at her.
Give me mine.
This is the first one I opened up. A mother's love is unconditional. Y'all see it? Stop playing with my mom.
And so you just did all that from that thing?
Girl, it's not yours.
And this.
All right.
Open it.
Open it.
It was supposed to be a normal afternoon in North Philadelphia. Barbershop customers sat waiting for haircuts. The usual sound of clippers buzzing in the background. No one expected what would happen next. Around 1:48 p.m. on October 7th, 2023, that ordinary scene turned into chaos. The sound of gunfire replaced the hum of conversation. Within seconds, a woman was lying on the floor unresponsive, covered in blood. The victim was quickly identified as Tiffany Wade, a 40-year-old entrepreneur and mother. To most people who knew her, Tiffany was focused on building her life. But beneath that surface was a personal conflict that had been building for years. Her killer wasn't a stranger. It was someone from her past, Armand Hilton, a man with a criminal record and a grudge. Armand Hilton wasn't just angry. He believed he was robbed of everything he had left in life. During his time in prison, he had trusted Tiffany with his properties and finances. But by the time he got out, Tiffany had filed for divorce, transferred everything into her own name, and moved on with her life. That betrayal, combined with financial loss, pushed Armand to make a deadly decision. He didn't choose a dark alley or a quiet home. He walked into a public barbershop in broad daylight with one purpose: confront Tiffany and end her life. What led up to that deadly moment? How did a relationship built on trust turn into a calculated murder in front of witnesses? In this story, we break down every step that led to one of Philadelphia's. This is a full story of every move, every brutal detail. Welcome to True Crime Unmasked. Subscribe and hit the bell icon for more stories. The show where we uncover the disturbing crimes tearing communities apart and the haunting truths hidden behind closed doors. These are real stories, real individuals, real consequences. Stay tuned for more captivating stories. Now let's dive in. Tiffany Wade was a 40-year-old woman at the time of her death. She was born and raised in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, and spent most of her adult life working hard to build a stable future for herself and her family. Tiffany was a single mother. She took responsibility for raising her children alone, making sure they had what they needed. Those who knew her describe her as hardworking and focused on making progress in life. Tiffany was also an entrepreneur. She either owned or was involved in small business ventures in her community. These businesses provided for her daily needs and her family's upkeep. Tiffany's career success didn't happen overnight. It was something she worked on consistently, especially during a difficult period of her life: the incarceration of her former romantic partner, Armand Hilton. Tiffany's relationship with Armand started years before his arrest and conviction. Their relationship began like many others, with trust, companionship, and shared plans for the future. When Armand was sentenced to prison, Tiffany didn't walk away immediately. Instead, she stayed in touch with him and managed certain responsibilities on his behalf. This included handling his property's finances or business assets. By all appearances, Tiffany was someone Armand trusted deeply with his personal affairs. As time passed, things started to change. During Armand's incarceration, Tiffany made significant moves to improve her own life. One of those moves involved taking legal steps to transfer Armand's assets into her own name. She also filed for divorce while he was still in prison. By the time Armand was released, Tiffany had not only claimed control over his properties, but she had also moved on romantically. Reports suggest that Tiffany had remarried or was in a new relationship by then. Within the community, Tiffany had a positive reputation. She was described by neighbors and acquaintances as friendly and approachable. There were no known conflicts involving Tiffany, except for the ongoing dispute between her and Armand regarding money and property. For many in the neighborhood, Tiffany appeared to be a woman focused on growth and taking care of her family. No one expected that her life would end the way it did. Armand Hilton was 44 years old at the time of the crime. His criminal history was not hidden. He was a convicted felon with a violent record. The exact length of his sentence at the time of incarceration is still under review, but his past crimes contributed to a reputation that made people cautious around him. Armand's life had been shaped by criminal activity and prison time, leaving him disconnected from many of the relationships he once had, except for Tiffany, who remained part of his life while he was behind bars. Before going to prison, Armand trusted Tiffany. He gave her control over his properties and finances, believing that she would protect him until he returned. However, upon his release, he realized that things had changed. From his perspective, Tiffany had betrayed him. The woman he thought would remain loyal had, in his view, taken everything from him: his assets, his relationship, and his future plans. Armand believed that Tiffany used his absence to her advantage. He saw the transfer of assets into her name as theft. He saw the divorce papers as rejection. And Tiffany's new romantic relationship was, to him, the final insult. Financially ruined, emotionally betrayed, and socially humiliated, Armand began to harbor intense resentment toward Tiffany. This resentment eventually led to the events that unfolded on October 7th, 2023. His motive was clear and straightforward. Armand claimed that Tiffany took everything from him during his weakest moment, the time he spent locked away. Instead of finding stability and reconciliation when he returned to society, Armand faced legal disputes over properties he once owned and a former partner who had clearly moved on from him. In his mind, there was only one way to handle the situation: revenge. This mindset would lead to a confrontation in broad daylight inside a local barbershop, resulting in one of the most shocking crimes seen in that community in recent times. The events that led to the tragic murder of Tiffany Wade were not random. They were the result of a broken relationship, financial disputes, and decisions that escalated over time. To understand how this crime happened, we need to go back to how Tiffany and Armand's relationship started falling apart. Tiffany Wade and Armand Hilton were not strangers. Their relationship began years earlier when things seemed stable. At that time, Armand was already involved in criminal activities. Eventually, he was arrested and sentenced to time in prison. While behind bars, Armand trusted Tiffany with his personal and financial matters. According to reports, he handed over his assets to her: properties, businesses, and possibly financial accounts. The idea was that Tiffany would manage everything until he returned home. For a while, everything seemed to be going according to plan. But things started to change during Armand's incarceration. Communication between Tiffany and Armand became inconsistent. Phone calls were ignored. Letters went unanswered. Whenever they spoke, the tone shifted from supportive to tense. Tiffany's priorities appeared to be shifting elsewhere. It wasn't long before Tiffany made legal moves that signaled a clear end to their relationship. She filed for divorce, a decision that Armand didn't expect. Not only did she file for divorce, but she also began taking steps to transfer all of Armand's known assets into her own name. This included properties, vehicles, and possibly businesses that Armand believed were still rightfully his. At this point, the relationship was no longer about love or partnership. It became a legal and financial battle. Court filings, property disputes, and other legal actions followed. Armand, still incarcerated, had limited ability to fight these actions effectively from behind bars. As the paperwork moved through the system, Tiffany gained more control over everything Armand once owned. There were also unconfirmed reports of confrontations and threats. Some people close to the situation claimed that Armand had made verbal threats about what would happen once he got out of prison. Whether those threats were ever formally reported to police remains unclear. What is certain is that resentment and anger were building. By the time Armand completed his sentence and was released, everything had changed. The world he expected to return to no longer existed. His former partner, Tiffany, had moved on, not just emotionally, but financially and legally. She was no longer waiting for him. She had built a new life with his former assets. Reports indicate that Tiffany may have even remarried or was involved with someone else romantically, further fueling Armand's feelings of betrayal. As Armand adjusted to life outside prison, the realization hit hard. He was left with nothing. What was supposed to be a temporary arrangement had become permanent. In his mind, Tiffany had taken advantage of his absence, secured his wealth, cut him out, and erased his role in her life entirely. Feeling both abandoned and humiliated, Armand began to plan his next steps. These were not legal steps. He wasn't filing lawsuits or seeking mediation. He was preparing for something else. Somewhere during those weeks after his release, Armand made a decision to confront Tiffany directly. Not to talk, not to negotiate, but to take action. On Saturday, October 7th, 2023, started like any normal day in North Philadelphia. For most people, it was just another weekend. The streets around West Lehigh Avenue were busy with cars, people walking to local shops, and barbershops filled with customers getting ready for the week ahead. Nobody knew that by the end of that afternoon, the entire neighborhood would become the center of a violent crime scene. The exact movements of both the victim, Tiffany Wade, and the suspect, Armand Hilton, from a morning to early afternoon, are not fully confirmed. What is clear is that at some point that day, Armand made a decision that would change both their lives forever. Whether this was a planned confrontation or a sudden decision has not been made public by authorities. What's known is that the confrontation would take place in a very public location. At around 1:45 p.m., witnesses say that they saw Armand Hilton walking into a local barbershop located on the 2500 block of West Lehigh Avenue. This was not a hidden meeting spot or a private residence. This was a working barbershop in the middle of the day, with customers inside, some waiting for haircuts, others already in the barber chairs. People were talking, music was likely playing, and nobody expected the danger that was about to arrive. Tiffany Wade was inside that barbershop at the time. Whether she was there for an appointment, visiting someone, or simply passing through has not been confirmed. What is confirmed is that Armand entered with one goal: to confront Tiffany. The barbershop was busy enough that many people witnessed what happened next. According to some witness statements given to police later that day, an argument may have broken out between Tiffany and Armand. Some described raised voices. Others said the confrontation happened quickly, with little time to process what was unfolding. What began as words quickly escalated to violence. Suddenly, loud gunshots echoed through the barbershop. Panic set in immediately. Some witnesses said they heard several shots fired in quick succession. Customers and barbers scattered, some ducking behind chairs and counters for cover, others rushing to the exit as fast as possible. Chaos filled the space in a matter of seconds. When the shooting stopped, Tiffany Wade was on the floor. She had been struck multiple times, including wounds to her head and torso. She was unresponsive. As soon as the last shot echoed through the busy North Philadelphia barbershop, panic followed. People scrambled for safety, running into the streets, some hiding behind chairs and counters. Within minutes, 911 calls flooded Philadelphia's emergency lines, reporting an active shooter inside the barbershop on the 2500 block of West Lehigh Avenue. The Philadelphia Police Department responded quickly. Officers arrived at the scene just minutes after the first calls. They secured the area with yellow tape, pushed the growing crowd backward, and moved systematically into the shop. Inside, they found Tiffany Wade unresponsive, bleeding from multiple gunshot wounds. Emergency medical personnel worked on the scene, but at approximately 2:04 p.m., she was pronounced dead. Officers immediately began speaking with witnesses inside and outside the building. Several people had seen the shooter's face. They knew who he was. It didn't take long for the police to gather the first critical piece of the investigation: the identity of the suspect, Armand Hilton, a 44-year-old man from Chester, Pennsylvania. While investigators began collecting evidence on the crime scene, shell casings, bullet trajectories, fingerprints, detectives worked in real time to piece together what led to the deadly confrontation. Witnesses described how Armand had walked into the barbershop, approached Tiffany, and fired multiple shots at close range. Afterward, he calmly left the building and disappeared into the neighborhood streets. Tiffany Wade and Armand Hilton were not strangers. Their relationship began years earlier, when things seemed stable. At that time, Armand was already involved in criminal activities. Eventually, he was arrested and sentenced to time in prison. While behind bars, Armand trusted Tiffany with his personal and financial matters. According to reports, he handed over his assets to her, properties, businesses, and possibly financial accounts. The idea was that Tiffany would manage everything until he returned home. For a while, everything seemed to be going according to plan. But things started to change during Armand's incarceration. Communication between Tiffany and Armand became inconsistent. Phone calls were ignored. Letters went unanswered. Whenever they spoke, the tone shifted from supportive to tense. Tiffany's priorities appeared to be shifting elsewhere. It wasn't long before Tiffany made legal moves that signaled a clear end to their relationship. She filed for divorce, a decision that Armand didn't expect. Not only did she file for divorce, but she also began taking steps to transfer all of Armand's known assets into her own name. This included properties, vehicles, and possibly businesses that Armand believed were still rightfully his. At this point, the relationship was no longer about love or partnership. It became a legal and financial battle. Court filings, property disputes, and other legal actions followed. Armand, still incarcerated, had limited ability to fight these actions effectively from behind bars. As the paperwork moved through the system, Tiffany gained more control over everything Armand once owned. There were also unconfirmed reports of confrontations and threats. Some people close to the situation claimed that Armand had made verbal threats about what would happen once he got out of prison. Whether those threats were ever formally reported to police remains unclear. What is certain is that resentment and anger were building. By the time Armand completed his sentence and was released, everything had changed. The world he expected to return to no longer existed. His former partner, Tiffany, had moved on, not just emotionally, but financially and legally. She was